There we are. Cool. So I see the thing going. We are recording. This is the Sustainiacs. I am Michael Vincent, and I have a great show today because of a guest here who I've been trying to get on for a little bit here. His name is Will Kerr, and he's the CEO of Edge Logistics. Welcome to the show, my friend. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Michael. I'm glad to be here.
I understand you got a new title, right? What's the new title? And did they pay you more, or was it one of those things as, hey, you're so good, here's more responsibility and like and our undying gratitude?
There, I won't discuss the pay, but I do have a new title. I recently became the CEO of Edge Logistics. I'm the first CEO we've ever had.
Wow.
Up for the last 9 years, I've been the president, and we've hired Blaine Barnett, industry legend, to be our new president and help run the day-to-day operations, so I can focus more on recruiting, sales, technology, and some other things.
Yeah, steering the ship, right? Hey, so is it true? Is the story true that Edge Logistics started in like a double wide trailer on the banks of the East River? Is that right?
That is true. Yes. Yeah. In Greenport, New York. Yep.
Were you in? Did you have the honor of working
Oh,
that double
yeah.
wide? Or
Yeah. No, I was the founder, with along with a couple other folks, Jordan Lonnie, my wife Maria, and a few other people. We're all there in the trailer, and yeah, we had an extension cord that ran power from the main building out to the trailer. We didn't have any bathrooms or heat or anything like that. But New York's a little more mild than Chicago, so we made it work and got through our first winter there. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I would imagine that you needed like to be indoors with an actual heater before you made the move to Chicago. I imagine that's what
Yeah.
that
Yes.
is very, very true. Very cool. Did you watch the
Yeah.
Super Bowl, Will?
I did.
Did
Yeah, it was a great
what?
game. We had a lot of fun. I was at home with my wife and my in-laws and my son William.
Yeah,
And it's the first time he's got to really watch, a large part of the Super Bowl, so that was fun, and we had a good time. I picked the Chiefs, so that was fun. But yeah, it was a good game.
yeah. I picked the Chiefs, and I actually qualified it by saying because they just seem to get the right flags at the right times. And I think that proved out as well. You think Hertz at least has a chance to win that game if he's got a minute and a half left without that flag?
It's tough to say. I don't think anybody should be complaining about the officiating, in the Super Bowl. But that last flag was debatable, I guess. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I look at it this way. I don't know if it was necessarily bad or not, but it's one of those flags that you would expect that they actually discuss and say, should we pick that up or not? I mean, did it really change the outcome of this play? Because this is going to change the outcome of this game, or potentially, right? And I think that's kind of the thing that was with me is they didn't really
It depends
discuss it.
what side you're on. Like as a sports fan, I'm usually a big homer, and whatever way I want the call to go is usually the way I see it. So we can,
I don't disagree. I am biased that way as well.
yeah.
I'm totally biased that way myself, Will. So, Will,
Yeah.
give this audience is not is not the same as you would expect. Like, when I was with Freight Waves, et cetera. Give the people a rundown what Edge Logistics is, what you guys are about.
Yeah, we're a domestic truckload transportation provider. We work mostly with enterprise shippers, with national footprints, and what we do is we build out custom carrier bases for them that last, throughout markets and over time. And I guess our mission statement is to, create an environment where elite shippers and elite carriers can work together in a frictionless and transparent environment. And we built that through our digital freight matching platform Capacity, which has over 16,000 active carriers or active user carriers, and a few hundred active shippers, and we're able to really make a lot of strides in the automation of the traditional freight brokerage.
Yeah, the digital move was. Um, needed and exciting and funny at times what people were calling digital, right? I mean, they stopped using a fax machine and therefore they were digital. Some people, claim that type of stuff. But
I'm a lifelong carrier side guy, so that's the way I came up in this business. So
sure,
when I think of
sure,
what's digital versus what's traditional, for me it's real simple. Traditional is you call a number, you talk to somebody about a load, you go, it's picking up on this day in this place, go to this place on this
right,
day. It's a load of this, it weighs this, and we're paying this. And then there's a negotiation, you get put on hold, they have to get it approved. You come back, maybe you have a deal, maybe you don't have a deal. But ultimately, hundreds of people at thousands of carriers every day are calling hundreds of brokers and hundreds of brokerages every day, going through the same song and dance. It takes forever. It's very slow. It's archaic. It's not transparent, and it doesn't enable data-driven decision making, which enables logic-based decision making. So those are all things that we wanted to change because we really could tell that there was a better way possible. And I think in the early days of digital brokerage and digital freight matching, there was all this myth, this narrative about carriers not having an appetite for new technology and not wanting to use apps and not wanting to log in to portals and not wanting to have brokers become their marketplace, and all that. And I think that was just a big lie that was pushed down by big trucking trying to slow down the big brokers. But in our experience, the carriers have had a tremendous appetite for technology and wanting to get better and do business faster and more accurately. And for brokers, the big secret about freight brokerage is we all have the same customers. We all can have the ability to work with the same carriers, and we all have pretty much the same rates. So how do you
yeah,
differentiate yourself as a broker? It's execution, it's decision making, and it's getting things right the first time in the trenches. And that's what we really focus on here is trying to have really strong first tender capacity realization rates, trying to have really strong relationship carrier utilization where the same carriers are doing the same loads over and over and over again, and build efficiency in the market that way by building real partnership between big shippers and regionally operated family-owned trucks.
yeah, absolutely. I think so many of them miss it, and many of the people out in this audience don't understand the complexities of logistics, and that's just how difficult it was back when all you had was a phone. And I started with we had a phone, we didn't even have internet or any of that kind of stuff. We had an AS400 and and remote terminals, but you couldn't, you could send a Twix message across a dot matrix printer, but that was about it. Across 970 some odd terminals when I started at Roadway Express, didn't make it really, really efficient. The thing is, adopting that technology really gives you that ability, like you said, to actually actually execute in a thoughtful and intelligent and efficient manner rather than just getting through how difficult and tedious it was to do everything by phone and fax back and forth. You just have enough time to get a deal done and try and get the next deal done. You don't have time to execute in a smart way or to even bring on business in a logical manner, right? I mean, your growth and everything now can be much more strategic, and your alliances and partnerships and your service to those customers is a lot more strategic. And obviously, everybody benefits a bit better, right?
Yeah. I mean, I always tell young reps that there's two kinds of brokers in this business. There's the kind that build sandcastles and the kind that build fortresses. And the kind that build sandcastles, like you build a really cool sandcastle, and it could be awesome. But at the end of the day, that tide's going to come in, and it's going to sweep that sandcastle away. And the next day, you're going to have to come in and start all over and build a brand new, awesome sandcastle. And you can get pretty far in freight brokerage by working really hard, being really consistent, and coming in every day and building a new business by posting loads and taking call-ins and working with different carriers and trying to make big rips and like all that kind of stuff. But the really effective way is to build a carrier network that gets bigger, stronger, and more effective in terms of on-time pick, on-time delivery, and GPS tracking over time. right? Where the same carriers, you come in and you still have them the next day, and then you still have them the day after that, and you're adding to that pool. But the carriers are sticking with you, sticking with your customers, and operating the same business. And I think the brokers that go out there and they build the fortresses, they build the networks that last, are the ones that are really successful in this business. And I think that's the big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. So being in it for 35 years in this business, and you founded Edge Logistics and been in the business for quite some time, and obviously very, very successful. Let's talk a bit about logistics and what its role is, or how it plays in sustainability, what its impacts are from just a regular standpoint, and then what is Edge's play in sustainability.
I mean, I think it's undeniable that transportation, both globally and in the United States, is a major offender of carbon emissions and
Sure.
other negative impacts on the climate or climate change or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
But it's also an unbelievably necessary component to pretty much every single aspect of the global economy and quality of life around the world. So
Right.
we have a big balancing act that we need to handle, and there's a lot of difficult calls that are made. But I did a little research that said 29% of the global carbon emissions are from transportation and logistics, and of that, 22% of it is trucking.
Yeah.
So that's a big number, right? So
Sure.
what really do about it? I mean, I think the first step is to be able to scorecard it and to be able to count what are the real time emissions. And that's one of the big things that we're focused on here is being able to calculate load by load carbon emissions and bring that transparency to the shippers that we work.
Oh, that's interesting. So you're looking at that load by load emission standard and giving. Are you giving the different carrier scorecards as well as like the shippers? Are there choices that can be made to try and impact that? Or are you guys?
This is a new thing that we're doing, but we have an
Yeah.
API that allows us to measure the real time carbon emissions on a load by load basis, both for carriers and shippers in our capacity platform. So every load will have the estimated carbon emissions, right there listed in the order, and we're
So
able to provide reporting on that, on a larger scale for customers who want to either be aware of what their carbon emissions are, to be able to roll that into maybe an overall ESG report for their business, or do something about it, like buy offsets or whatever else.
yeah, because I mean, there's a whole lot to it, right? And people out there listening, they think, okay, there's emissions on the truck, but besides that, what can really be done? There's so many different sides to this and so many different angles to this. Will, as you know, it's so much more than just what type of engine is it, but it's how efficiently is that shipper utilizing capacity, right? Are all their loads full, or are they leaving 20% on the table every time? Could they be better at shipping quantities or delaying shipments until it's bigger, consolidating those shipments? And also the intermediary, your role and how you put things together, those load matchings, and using the digital information to be able to reduce circuitous miles, whether they be empty or deadhead or whatever they happen to be, right?
Yeah, no, the reduction of empty trailers driving on the roads is the number one way that we could impact, overall carbon emissions for sure. That's the way that brokerages have been selling, being sustainable and carbon efficient for years. When you work with a broker, we could pull capacity from such a larger pool of carriers and proximities to the shipper. And when you're able to cut down on deadhead miles, brokers can usually beat a fleet-based program, pretty substantially, and that could have a huge impact on the ship on the overall like annual carbon imprint for a shipper.
Yeah.
We measure deadhead on every load that we have, and we can, and that's something that we really take into consideration, when selecting capacity, is trying
Yeah.
to be the closest truck.
It seems to me that the difficult thing being in the position that you're in. I mean, there's many difficulties in logistics and being an intermediary. I'm not trying to imply that's an easy job, except for this one thing. It is not. It's a difficult industry, and you got to know what you're doing. And like you said, you got to come with your A game every single day. It's very, very competitive and very, very important to the E, S, and the G globally, right? Of ESG. But you're dealing mostly with scope 3 type of emissions, right? It's really hard to and it's much more difficult than say being a manufacturer and you could put some scrubbers in a smokestack or something like that, right? To impact emissions.
Yeah, it is. It's difficult to monitor for sure. And there's some third-party data aggregators out there who are doing a really good job, pushing the envelope on that sort of reporting. And we're working with one of them already, and that's been a really great experience for us.
Yeah. So I mean, so you're bringing this new thing to the table for logistics and giving that measurement of emissions and what the shipper scopes are, and back to the carriers, et cetera. Creating these strategies, it's pretty difficult because it is scope 3. Is this like, I mean, it requires a lot of cooperation and transparency between everybody, right? And sharing of data in order to get this data together and report it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the reporting is only as good as the data that we have in the system. We're really good at capturing data throughout the life of the load. That's one of the things that we've really prided ourselves on, is being able to aggregate data, implement it into our decision making process, and use it to get better, faster, and more accurate. So that's something that we've always tried to do. I think freight brokers are in a unique position where we see a large part of the life of the load throughout the domestic transaction, at least. So we can give a pretty good, endpoint to endpoint picture of, what did that truck do? Where did it come from? How long was it there? What was the route? What are the altitude and other weather impacts of that route? And then come to an overall score that we could then aggregate into a shipper scorecard or a carrier scorecard, or even just on a load by load. I think that step one is for us to be able to give that information to the people or the companies that we serve, and work with them in order to keep getting better.
That's a really interesting point because you're looking at the fact that you know how long it was there, the route it took, the weather, and all that other. So offering feedback as far as the carbon emissions or the emissions footprint, carbon footprint of the shippers, receivers, et cetera, goes beyond just the equipment and the routes and the utilization of that capacity from a movement, but it's also delays sitting at the dock or in the yard, right?
Each load is different, and it's hard to be able to put a overall like lane score or whatever, because there's so
Sure.
much variation between from a shipper to shipper basis. So I think being able to give that unique, you know, shipper personal reporting, allows them to aggregate an overall, carbon impact of their business. And then, if their boards, and their customers and all that value that deeply, like most of the data shows, that they could go do something about
Yeah. Well, I mean, I imagine they do value it. Are you seeing more and more demand from your customers and from your partners for this type of data from either side, the carrier or the shipper?
I think we're still in the early stages of being able to really put accurate scores on this stuff. We
Yeah.
launched it about 3 months ago. It's been live for about 6 weeks. We're starting to bring it into all our QBR meetings, and send out all our communications with our customers on a monthly or weekly basis or whatever it may be. And it's part of our portal, but we have not seen a mainstream adoption of this technology or reporting, in the shipper community yet. It is something that we do expect to continue to come down towards us here in transportation, but so
Yeah.
far less than you.
No, no, I love the road you're going down there because one of my next questions was really the future where this is going. Do you see this evolving into the fact that as a logistics intermediary as you are, and the pressures for emissions, reductions and carbon footprint and efficiency, et cetera. Do you see the demand from industry to look to you and your sector of logistics to be that data provider, to be that analytics provider in an aggregated form or individual company form?
Um, Whether or not they look to us for that is kind of irrelevant. I think we have the ability to bring that to the table.
Yeah,
And anytime we can add in value to the table, that's something that we're going to be really interested in doing. I think we all in the business community have a responsibility to do our best for the planet and the country and in the overall global, health and prosperity. I think different societal pressures will continue to evolve here. I think it's important to understand, how critical the transportation community is to the quality of life we have here in the United States, and that we can't, really take that for granted. But
yeah,
at the same time, recognize that we need to make some, long-term, forward-thinking policy, in order to, curb global warming or climate change
right,
or
sure,
whatever you want to.
yeah,
And I think
absolutely.
the
So, Will, from a legislative or
that's another risk. I think something that I think a lot of corporations and big power shippers are considering is they're preparing for more political government
sure. Well,
standard.
I mean, when you look at, you like you is talking about, you've got some Congress people, it's like 34, 35, whatever, led by Fisher from Nebraska, looking to, repeal or rethink these EPA standards that were adopted in December, right? But if you
Uh,
take that a step further, is it going to come down to, will green sourcing of your capacity be a thing that you're going to have to watch because of legislation at some point? I mean, the care the the manufacturers are under this pressure. And then sales. So that means, you've got, this, at least from the sales side, but it's not like you can't buy this or that type of engine but that's going to happen, right? So eventually, do you think that becomes a pressure on you guys to capacity or source capacity from greener pastures, so to speak?
yeah, sure. I think if you're talking about like electric vehicles and like alternative fuels and that sort of thing, I think
Yeah,
we're unfortunately a lot farther away from that than people think.
sure.
And I think that the big problem is power.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
don't think
Of
the grid
course.
is anywhere near capable of being able to support the transportation
Well,
community.
it's nowhere near green. I mean, you talk about the impact of trucking and transportation on greenhouse emissions. Electricity is actually the number one producer of greenhouse gases in the world. So,
It's a tough one. But yeah,
yeah,
I think anything we can do to differentiate ourselves and show that our trucks are better is something that we're interested in doing. And for shippers that are interested in ESG and have policies and long term plans in place to get more green, transportation is one of the biggest offending zones for sure. You got to balance that with the critical nature of having quality and affordable transportation as well. And that's, I think, the balance that all across the supply chain, manufacturing, raw materials, everything. It's the balance of cost versus you know impact. And until that stuff starts to change through whatever vehicles, whether it's political or societal or consumer pressure or whatever. I don't think we're going to see a major shift in terms of like truck utilization. You know what I mean? Yeah.
oh yeah, yeah. No, I get it. I mean, it is the it takes a while for that adoption because there's different ways you have to change the way you look at your ROI and your short and long term returns on investments and longevity of the company, et cetera. Unfortunately, I mean, for the planet or the environment, it suffers a bit because of because of cost. But I mean, that's where we're at. I mean, it's not anybody just deciding, hey, I'd rather make dollars than invite. It's just the fact you have to survive as well in order to have those impacts, right? What do you think the future, if we're looking at this from the customers or demands on you, or anticipating from the future? In other words, does it go past emissions in logistics? I mean, I know it does, but does your role change as far as planning those routes and providing that data back and forth? Does it become more and more efficient, because this is going to evolve, right? I mean, you're looking for efficiencies right now, right? But now you've also got, we got to try and be green at the same time. How does that kind of blend together as you see the future?
For me, Michael, it's like you can only control what you can control, right?
Yeah,
The the truck is going to have a certain amount of emissions, but what can we do as a supply chain to make that as little as possible? Number
yeah,
one, get trucks loaded in and out of facilities as quickly as possible. Anything we can do to have trucks not waiting in lines, not waiting in yards, not waiting indoors, and sitting there idle is the number one thing we can do. Many
yeah,
shippers are very guilty of not taking that seriously at all. And some are just beyond good at it and beyond
yeah,
efficient. But huge variance in our country there. I think having a little bit better, organization and structure, on a widespread basis there is one thing that we can really control to make a big impact on that. And then the other thing is, empty miles. Anything we can do to have less empty trucks driving around on our roads is something that, the shippers, the brokers, and the carriers should all be trying to work towards together. And whether that looks like more transparent capacity sharing or capacity swaps in the future between brokerages or between asset brokers and regular brokers, whatever that may be. I think there's a huge opportunity there to go faster in a more digital way with swaps. And I think over the next 10, 15 years, we're going to see that emerge as one of the primary ways that freight's moved.
yeah, yeah. When you talk about the efficiencies, and some shippers have it down pat, and some just really don't give a rip. I in a former life, I used to threaten to, and they would take me up on it because it's really not much of a threat. But I would threaten to take my warehouse people and terminal people to Chicago and take them to a Portillo's at lunchtime and just show them how a smooth operation works, right? Because I mean, they can blow through 400 customers, bang,
Yeah,
like that, right? Am I wrong? I mean, it's an amazing operation. Watch them do that type of stuff. It's
yeah, no,
unbelievable.
operational excellence and getting things right the first time and having less mistakes and waste and time wasted
Yeah.
is the number one thing we could do to make a big impact. And if we could just make little tiny improvements, 1 or 2% here or there, it makes a huge impact on the overall, annual carbon footprint.
Oh yeah, no, it absolutely does. So let me ask you this question, kind of a futuristic thing. When you talk about like final mile, and you talk about the you can argue either side. I argue that the consumer does not demand same day delivery or second day delivery. It was pushed on them by competition and service and Amazon, et cetera, et cetera. And studies will show that is true. But when you look at municipalities, like Chicago, is it, or should it, or is it possible that like delivery and supply chain and infrastructure in the city of like a Chicago or New York or even Chattanooga for that matter become a public utility? I mean, it's a necessary thing. It's just like delivering water or electricity to the homes. So is delivery of goods. No, does that become a concept in reality later? Because how do you get to true efficiency if you still have 7 or 8 or 10 different players all trying to deliver to the same neighborhoods?
I mean, historically in Chicago, they did do that. They had a whole subterranean transportation community under the entire city back in the old days that had trains and roads and cars and final mile and had garbage and removal and everything. But it was abandoned for because of maintenance and that sort of stuff
Sure.
over 100 years. But it's been done before, and yeah, I mean, hypothetically, sure. I think business in the United States being able to control their supply chain and their deliveries as a service offering is something that many businesses really hold close,
Sure.
and something that they like to control and control their customer experience and that sort of thing. I think you might lose a little bit of that with the utilization or whatever you want to say of the of city planning or whatever. But
Yeah.
in union cities like Chicago, I think a lot of the deliveries are already like that, and for the most part, they're controlled by private companies, but with union workers and pretty standardized service offerings. But yeah, there's been some Amazons or whatever where you see some rented cargo van dropping off packages at 9 p.m. Like that's maybe not a union guy, but
Yeah,
who knows?
probably
Uh,
not.
we yeah, it's happened before and it could be done again. But I
Yeah.
think the privatization of business will be a big roadblock for that because of institutional control
Yeah.
wanting to own
No, no, I get it. I think there's a huge roadblock. I just think it's an interesting concept to think about. Like you said, the utilitization, or however you're going to say it. Right? Anyways, where people go, they go to edgelogistics.com or edge.com. Where are they going to find out more and work with you guys?
Yeah, edgelogistics.com. You can download the Capacity app on the iOS or the Android store, or use the web version. You can sign in with Highway if you're already a Highway carrier. And if you want to learn more and you're a shipper, go click the learn more on our website, and we'll have someone get with you right away.
Excellent stuff. Thank you so much, Will. This is the Sustainiacs. I'm Mike Vincent. Peace and love, everybody.